So to the left of me, Dr. Graeme Codrington is setting up his laptop, which is set up, almost. In the meantime, I'll just announce his presentation. His presentation, there is no Q&A after his presentation, and the reason for that is that he is around this evening as well during the social event. So you can approach him and ask him any questions that you have after this presentation. I'll do a short wrap-up after his presentation, and then we'll close for the evening event. He's an expert on the future of work. He's a researcher, an author, hired as a strategy consultant, and he also talks about tomorrow today. He's the founder of a company called Tomorrow Today. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for your last speaker of the day, Dr. Graeme Codrington. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I'm not sure which is more difficult, following a legend like Michael Porter or following that. That was amazing, Felipe. Thank you very much. We come to the last session of the day, and maybe strangely or maybe not, we turn our focus towards the future. We've spent a lot of the time today thinking about the future, but now thinking about what this means in terms of the impact on us as leaders, on us as individuals. We know that we live in a very complex world, a very fast-moving world, where change is not just change as we've experienced it throughout our lives. Take last year, increase it by 10%, and you get next year. We've heard from speakers throughout the day, and Michael Porter in particular reiterated the fact that what got us here is not going to get us there. To put it another way, we are living in a world right now where what helped you to succeed in the past is not necessarily, or in fact almost certainly, is not going to help you to succeed in the future. As the late management guru Peter Drucker put it, the greatest danger in times of turbulence, and I'm sure you will agree that we are living in turbulent times right now. So he's talking about the times that we live in right now. And the greatest danger we face is not actually the turbulence. Yes, many parts of the world are going through a global economic crisis. We call it global, it's not really global, but many parts of the world are experiencing economic turmoil. Many parts of the world are experiencing political turmoil. But that's not the big news. The big news in the world today is that in addition to the politics and economics that are turbulent around us, actually there are many, many more forces at work in the world that are changing the shape of the world dramatically around us. And our danger right now, and I'm beginning to get nervous for many of my clients across very many different industries, they're saying things like, I can't wait for this crisis to be over. This economic crisis in most cases. I can't wait for this to be over, and then we can get back to normal. Then we can go back to doing things how we used to do them, to making money the way we know how to make money. If my message is anything this afternoon, it's that that will never happen. There is no normal to go back to. Even if I could wave a magic wand here this afternoon and fix the economy while we're sitting here, we will not go back to how things used to be. In fact, the danger is acting with yesterday's logic in a changing world tomorrow. We're kind of like these two guys sitting in this boat, going along our lives, our everyday lives, sort of working out what we should do. Some of you are so good at what you do, you can do it half asleep. But we're not necessarily lifting our eyes up beyond our current situation to see big, turbulent, unexpected, unpredicted, unprecedented forces coming our way. Every now and again there's a bump and noise, and economy changes, politics changes, and then you've got to wake your team up, you've got to get the motor of your business going, and then the change thunders at you. And yeah, in the current economic climate, let's not talk about bailouts. We live in a remarkable moment of history where we do have major historical forces coming our way. I'd like to suggest to you that actually we live at a moment in history that history itself will look back on, where all the forces of change, social, cultural, political, economic, organizational, even spiritual and personal forces are all combining at one moment in history to change our world. This happens every few centuries. The last time it happened in this way was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And consider what the world would be like before electricity, what the world was like before mechanization, before motors and engines, and therefore before cars and trucks and factories and trains and aeroplanes. That's not such a big thought. For many of you, that is your parents' world. Literally, there are people just 1 or 2 generations away from us who grew up, who were born in that world. And then it all changed, and here we are today. And I really do believe it's changing again. And what that means for you as a leader is that you have to change your mindset about what the future looks like. You have to change your mindset about what it is that you should be doing right now as a leader, you and your organization. In fact, I think the primary skill of leaders today is this: our ability to look beyond what seems to be the horizon to what's actually happening. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see remarkable things happen in the world. And I believe history will look back and say, this was a moment when everything changed. This is what my team and I research and study every day. We spend a lot of time trying to understand what's causing this change and what these changes are going to cause in the world. We have suggested that there are 5 key forces that are disrupting the world dramatically right now. 5 forces that above all others are causing deep structural and significant change in the world. We've called these the tides of change. And just very briefly, those tides, an acronym for the 5 forces, are these. Technology, an obvious place to start. You've talked a lot about science and technology today already. Technologies are impacting our lives with these tiny little powerful devices, cheap and accessible to everybody all over the world. Just last month, it was estimated, I mean, it's impossible to say exactly when it happened, but in the last few weeks, there have been more mobile phones than people in Africa. Now, not all of those are smartphones, but Africa is not far behind with these devices. And of course, if you go into the developed world, everybody's got one. Most of you, if you had left your phone at home on your way to this conference, would have turned around and gone back for it. You would not be able to spend a day without your phone. Small, cheap, incredibly powerful devices in the palm of our hand, giving us access to amazing information. Now, this has impacted us in a variety of different ways. Probably my favorite photograph of this past year is actually these 2 put together. If you want to talk about the world changing, who thought we could have a retirement of a pope? But the last pope that came into the seat in Rome, in the Vatican City, there's everybody waiting for the announcement, ready to get their candles lit. Here is the announcement of the Pope earlier this year, and not one of those is a candle. Those are smartphones, iPads, iPods, tablets, notebooks, notepads. In just 8 years, the world has changed like that. I experienced this a little bit more personally. A few months ago, Amazon had a massive sale on a variety of 1980s movies. And my wife and I thought that it would be a good idea to introduce these movies to our 3 children. I have 3 daughters, 14, 11, and 8. And I thought we should give them names, but my wife said it's the digital age, numbers are fine. It's not true. It's not true. Don't believe everything I say. But anyway, we got 3 daughters, that's at least is true. And we wanted to introduce them to the culture of the 1980s. All of us think the culture of our teenage years was the best. And so off we went and bought a pile of these movies. I was very excited the first night we put one of these on. I think it was Home Alone to start with. And we got sort of 15 minutes into the movie, and I looked across to my daughters, expecting them to be as deeply engrossed and enraptured with these movies as I had been. Nothing. No reaction at all. We got through Home Alone. I thought, okay, let's try something else. I think the next one was Back to the Future. We put that in. I looked across after 15 minutes to see the reaction, the excitement on their faces. Nothing. Eventually, I couldn't take it any longer. I said to them, what's wrong? I mean, these are the greatest movies ever made. What's the problem? And my daughters looked at me and said, but they make no sense. Why doesn't anybody just phone? Almost every one of the plots of every one of the movies I loved as a kid, almost every plot of every Magnum P.I. episode, and possibly MacGyver and all the others, the A-Team as well, could be solved with the introduction of a single cell phone. Nobody has to roar up and down Honolulu in a Ferrari anymore. You just phone. My daughters don't get these movies. History is ruined. Technology is changing our lives and changing them fast. The I in the tides of change stands for institutional change. This has got to do with the change to the structures of how our world is put together. Maybe to put it differently, it's the rules for success and failure that govern your industry. What's a good lead time? What's the right margin? What's the best distribution channel? Who are your competitors? What should your strategy be? All of these questions used to have very clear, obvious, and agreed upon answers. All of you knew the answers to those questions and you stuck to the rules. Some of you still do, and that's why you're struggling. Because the rules are being rewritten in every industry. The orthodoxies, these are not just the rules that are imposed from outside. These are your internal rules, the things you think are rules that you have to obey until somebody comes along, some competitor who's never been in your business before, and does it completely differently, and successfully too. You haven't seen that so much in your industry, but I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure the potential is there. Other industries are obvious to see, entertainment and banking and the motor industry, pharmaceuticals and others. These are all places where the rules have been broken over the last few years by new competitors, and the world has changed completely. Potential is there for you as well. The D in the tides of change stands for demographics. This is something you're very aware of. In fact, the theme of the conference, 9 billion people, how are we going to feed them in 2050? You understand that you must look at demographics, so nothing more to be said on that. And in fact, the E you understand as well, the environment. You've heard about this right from the first speaker this morning, from Jorgen, and then also from Michael Porter in his understanding of creating shared value. This is something you are integrally involved in, environmental and ethical issues. And then finally, the S is for social values. If everything else is changing as it is, then people's expectations of what is right and good, and what is normal and what is weird and what is bad and what is wrong, these things are all changing too. And we're seeing that in everything from how people think about what a marriage is and who's allowed to get married and who isn't, all the way through to our definitions of success in the workplace, to virtual working and flexible office hours, to everything. What we believe, what our expectations are from the world, from life, from our work, these things are all changing. So the tides of change, these 5 forces along with politics and economics, these are all shaping the world as we know it and shaping them in dramatic ways. Now, if you'd like more information about these in more detail, tonight, this evening's focus is on technology. But if you want more detail on all of these 5, and if you have a Twitter account, if you don't, I think you can still sign up outside. If you have a Twitter account, I have 2 minutes ago just tweeted the link. It's that link across the bottom, but if you've got your Twitter account and you're following AgriVision, you'll have it right now, and you can go and have a read about these 5 forces in detail. But our focus now is on technology, because you've seen institutional change in Michael Porter's presentation. Demographics you talked about earlier, you'll come back to it tomorrow. The environment is a theme throughout the conference. But technology needs some attention, because this is, I believe, the single most important driving force that will drive more than half of all the changes that we're going to see over the next decade or so. You see, in the last few years, we have dramatically increased the power of computers. Not only have we made them smaller and cheaper and put unlimited power almost in the palms of our hands, we've also increased the power of computers in three specific ways. The raw processing power of a computer's brain, the CPU, has dramatically increased in the last few years. In fact, current estimates say that by 2025, a handheld device will be as powerful as a human brain. Right now it isn't, by the way. I know on a late afternoon, on a cold Dutch day, you might not feel as if you are processing at about 15 times faster than a supercomputer. You are. If you look around the table at the people you're seated with, it's probably clear we're not supercomputers. Apologies to the people you're sitting with, but it's late. But you are processing at a magnificent level of power. Our ability to recognize other people you haven't seen in years. You went to school with them 30 years ago. You meet them now. They've lost some of their hair. They've put on a little bit of weight. But you still recognize them. Do you know there's no computer in the world that can do that? There's no computer in the world that can see depth like you can. And I'm guessing there's no computer in the world that can do sand art like that. Not yet, but soon. By 2050, and here's a thought after your bottle of wine this evening, you will be able to buy a handheld device for less than €1,000 that has more computer processing power than the entire human race combined. What happens then? Do these things get personalities when they get that intelligent? Do they get character? Do we get to interact with them? Can you transfer yourself into one of them? These are all questions that need at least one bottle of wine before you even start them. We have seen remarkable computing power develop over the last few years. And there are going to be some remarkable advances that take place because of that over the next few years. But I'd like to make it easy for you this afternoon and suggest there are only two things you need to worry about. Only two things you and your company need to be focusing attention on. They're two big things, but they're only two. The first is the tremendous amount of data that is now available to us. Our ability to gather data, more data than we could ever have imagined, and process that data in real time and use the outputs of that data processing to immediate and valuable effect. This is a fundamental shift in human history. To put it another way, maybe more simply, we can know everything. Right now, even as we sit in this room, you can know everything. Every piece of information I say, every fact I state, every quote I make, you can check it up within 30 seconds. I can't get away with anything, and neither can you. Our ability to gather data and process that data in real time is unbelievable, and it is impacting every single part of our lives. Now, you know this. I'm not going to talk about the science of your industry. I'm not an industry specialist. So let me give you a few practical examples of how this is impacting us. The first example comes through what this woman is wearing on her face, Google glasses or Google goggles. I'm sure you've heard about these. They've been in the news for the last few months. They're about to be released to the public. We'll be able to buy one within the next few months. What this is augmented reality made real. Now, if augmented reality needs a bit of introduction, let's pause for a moment. Augmented reality is your ability to see the data associated with physical objects in the world. Every object in the world has data associated with it. Every light bulb in this room has data associated with it. As an example, the data is how bright it is, how hot it is, how many times it's been on and off. Maybe the most important piece of data in every light bulb is how many useful hours it's got left. If it was designed for 10,000 hours and it's already been on for 9,996 of those hours, it would be good if we could know that. The maintenance manager of this building has to walk through here every morning and visually check the light bulbs because he's no way of knowing that data. But if you could look at that data and somehow scan it and then get that data, you would know which of these light bulbs needs changing preemptively. That's augmented reality. Augmented reality already exists in your telephone. If you have a smartphone, you have access to apps that will allow you to use augmented reality in many different ways. If you don't feel like going to the social function this evening, well, that's a problem. You have to go. So tomorrow evening, when you've got spare time and you choose which restaurant you want to go to, one of the apps I really like is called Around Me. I simply click on Around Me, and it looks in the 5-kilometer radius around where I am, and it tells me everything that's there, from banks to post offices, from restaurants to pubs, from petrol stations to airports. And it ranks them, lists them, rates them, gives me links to their menus at the restaurants, their telephone numbers. And I'm not sure that 99% of restaurants in the world have any idea that that app even exists, and that's how I'm going to choose where I go and eat tomorrow evening. Now, if you have a smartphone, you have access to that app. Now, I say if you have a smartphone, of course, if you have a BlackBerry, sorry for you. No, in all seriousness, BlackBerries are not smartphones. They are fantastic. I don't want to start a phone war here, but they are fantastic ways to answer email and messages, and certainly have better battery life than this thing. But they do not have access to the type of app stores that the Samsungs and the HTCs and Nokias and Apples do. So if you have a BlackBerry, please make sure you speak to a friend who's got a real smartphone and check out these apps. You see, this app, which is the Google app, will allow you to take a photograph of a book cover and have a look at all the data associated with that book, including possibly a summary of it. It allows you to go to art galleries and look at the detail of various masterpieces or even physical objects out in the real world and give you access to the Google database. If you are at that restaurant tomorrow evening and you don't happen to speak Dutch, just take a photograph of the menu and it will do an instant translation for you. And the latest version of the app will even do that in spoken language. I was in Turkey just a few weeks ago. The taxi driver, at least it's Istanbul, so he was probably pretending he couldn't speak English. And I just spoke into my phone what I wanted him to hear. I told the phone to translate it into Turkish. I held the phone up. It translated. We kind of worked it out. All of that is accessible right now. I'm not making any predictions. That's in your phone. Now, to get back to my lady. She's wearing that functionality on her face. These glasses here are not glasses. It's a little slab of glass on the top right-hand side of her right-hand eye, which has a data projector behind it, a video camera looking out on the world, and the frame has a Bluetooth connection to the phone in her pocket, which gives her instant access to the Google database. And everything that she's seeing is being put into the video, and then, well, this is what's happening in the top right-hand corner of her vision.
Okay, class, reply. Sounds good. I'll see you at 2. Okay, class, scan now. Okay, class, add to cart. Okay, class, check out. Pay with credit.
Okay, class, request taxi to current location.
Clients and agencies are naturally at odds with one another.
Okay, class, open Fitbit.
Dad. Okay, Glass, call 911.
911, what's your emergency?
Yeah, I found my father unconscious.
I'm sending an ambulance to your current location.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ambulance should be arriving now. I'm gonna stay on the call with you.
Thank you.
And so it goes on and on. Have a look for that YouTube video. Now, some of you are wondering, why would you do that? Now, why would you want that in your face? Well, I know for sure you're over the age of 40. I'm seeing the students down the front here taking furious notes. You can buy one of these within the next 3 months for about €1,000. Augmented reality and our ability to put data into our lives. Now, of course, if you're out on a farm, if you're out looking over an agricultural environment, to have the ability to see the data associated with every single cow, with every single ear of corn, to see the data associated with a bag of fertilizer or a bag of feed. Now, can you see why it might be useful? To know exactly what's happening with every single thing you're seeing, having up-to-date data all the time, instantly available. Our ability to gather data, process it in real time, and use that data is changing our world. Augmented reality is one example. My second example comes from this guy. His name is Sebastian Thrun. When Sebastian was 18 years old, he was involved in a horrific car accident. One of his best friends, who was the driver, was killed instantly. And Sebastian obviously was hugely impacted by that event, but dedicated the rest of his life to solving that problem. In a bit of research, he discovered that 1.2 million people are killed around the world every year in driver-related motor car accidents. And that number, 1.2 million, is above the desk of his office workstation. Sebastian is lucky enough to work for Google, which gives many of its staff members 20% discretionary time to work on any project they want to. And Sebastian is in charge of Google's Driverless Car project. 3 years ago, the project was released to the public. Google have created a driverless car. With the computing power we have, small and cheap, they're able to put a computer into a car, take a normal car like a Toyota Prius, put video cameras all around it and a sensor on the roof, and this car can now sense what's happening in the road around it. The GPS sat-nav in the car knows where to drive, knows the speed limit, knows where to turn left and right, and the sensors and cameras around the car know how to respond instantly. Step out in front of the car, it screeches to a halt in front of you. There have been no accidents reported in the 3 million miles of testing this car has gone through. But what's more important than that is that in September last year, the state of California gave this car a license. Arizona and Nevada have also given it a license. It's legal in Los Angeles. It is legal in Las Vegas. You can fly into LAX airport tomorrow morning. You can collect your baggage, go through passport control, and when you come out the front of the airport, you can hop not only into a normal taxi if you want to, but into one of Google's driverless car taxis. Type in the name of your hotel, and tomorrow morning, a car with no driver will drive you through the streets of Los Angeles in rush hour traffic. I'm not making any predictions, I'm telling you what's already happening. Here's my prediction. By 2025, not only will driverless cars be legal in your country, they might very well be compulsory in the city in which you live. And here's why. If every single car in a particular region, if every single car on a particular autobahn or motorway, if every single car in Noordwijk or every single car in Amsterdam is driverless, then every car can speak to every other car and tell it what it's trying to achieve, and the cars together can create a temporary traffic pattern just for the next hour or two. This is where computers are going beyond what we can do. We could never do that no matter how much we tried. And yet computers can now do it. Computers can do things we can't do. You and your company, you've spent the last 20 years spending a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, getting computers to do the things you could already do. But computers just do them cheaper, better, and faster. It's time for the next step. The next step is to get computers to do things you can't do. This is a very difficult thought to have, because I'm asking you to think of the things you can't think of. I'm asking you to imagine things you can't do. So maybe the right question is, what's your driverless car? In the agribusiness, what's the driverless car? What's the thing that can be done with computing and digital technologies and the new technologies we have? What can be done that you can't do? What is the next stage for your development? Driverless cars, yes, a wonderful innovation, but the concept of the driverless car in your industry is a great question to take back to your team. We could talk about many different examples. Here's an ant holding a computer microprocessor. If you make computers that small, you can put them into anything. Not only can we know what this light bulb is and how many hours it's got to go, we can control every single light bulb remotely, creating intelligent systems. If you haven't heard of the Internet of Things, look that phrase up and blow your mind about what's coming and what companies, the latest scientific companies are busy working on. And of course, you know this as well as I do, that in the field of genetics and in the field of development of animals, development of plants, and the development of human beings, we are pushing the boundaries in phenomenal ways. If we can put sensors in and around our light bulbs, we can certainly put sensors in and around ourselves. And once we can do that, like this woman has, then everything that's going on in your system can be automatically and immediately uploaded into a cloud-based system. Now, this is a video from a few years ago by Microsoft trying to show off a bit of futuristic kit, but the concept already exists. And I don't think you're going to have human beings on the other side of the system. I think we will have automated medical systems. Do you know one of the things we do every day, which is a real shame, because the most valuable piece of information that your body has about your health is what comes out of your body that we literally flush away. Now, I realize this is polite company, so let's keep this clean, but I really do believe that the cleverest thing we could do for health, public health right now, is to create smart toilets. That every time you go to the toilet, you have to, log in. Sorry. You have to check into the system. The system then, analyzes what you deposit there. It doesn't get uploaded to your Facebook page. Let's just make this clear. That's a little bit oversharing there. But it does go into the medical professional system, people you trust to analyze, and you get instant and immediate feedback from them. You haven't drunk enough water. Little text message reminding you to drink more water. Or maybe later this evening, I know you're in Holland, but let's just cut back a little bit on the beer. This is information you can choose to ignore if you want to, but at least the information is there. And anything we can't do with genetics and that type of things, we can do obviously with robotics. The advances in robotics over the last few years and months have been staggering, to say the least. But our ability to gather data and process it in real time is not just about the things we can analyze. It's actually about turning physical objects into data and then turning them back into physical objects. I'm sure all of you in the room have heard about 3D printing by now. But that is a 3D printer that will cost you 1,100 euros. It's called a Cubex. It's good to go, and it printed out that Eiffel Tower in 2 hours. This is the ability to scan physical objects. Take a physical object like a movable wrench like this. You scan it. Now, obviously, this is time speeded up, this National Geographic video. That would take a few hours to get the 3D rendered model into the computer. But once you've done that, you can specify shape changes and color changes, and then you send it to the 3D printer, which prints out, not using ink, of course, using plastics or composite material. Again, time speeded up. This is one of 3 different ways of 3D printing, using a powder to help it set. But there's no trick photography as he reaches into that powder and takes out of it a physical object that did not exist in the real world 3 years ago. He just has to blow the powder off of it, and you'll see the shape, the color, everything he's specified. These are not components you click together. This is interlocking, intermovable parts printed out in a single print run. Got to get your head around this. If you wake up in the morning and you discover a button missing from your jacket, no problem. Just scan the other one, print out a new one, and you're good to go. You've got friends coming for dinner and you suddenly realize you don't have enough glasses for all of them. No problem. You don't go to the store to get more. You just print out a few. Make sure you start in time to be ready for when your friends come. And last year in Brussels, just a few kilometers from here, a team of genetic researchers using stem cell material printed out a human jawbone and implanted it in a patient as a replacement part. We can print out bone. We can even print out soft tissue using these techniques. When made in China is made in your kitchen, then you know the world has changed. What I'm really trying to say is very simply this. I believe we live at a moment in history where we have only just begun a technology revolution. We're not in the middle of a technology era. We're not in the middle of a technology revolution. We're only just at the beginning. Everything that has been done in the last 60 years of computers has just got us to the starting line, and that's now. And we're going to see remarkable things happening in our lives, and you probably in your industry as well. The impossible made possible. But there are a few questions that maybe are worth you considering as you think about this. I'm not going to elaborate, but maybe these questions you can take away with you. The first question is this: what data do you have, and how are you using it? Data is at the heart of this revolution. Information. What data do you have in your business and how are you using it? Good farming is quite a lot about good information, it seems to me. The science, the context, all the information you provide to the farmers and that the farmers need. But it's more than that. It's about the data that you have that you're not even using yet. I did some work with DHL recently, who have made their trucks, all of their thousands of trucks all around the world are smart trucks. Their trucks analyze themselves. They've got all sorts of data. And their trucks track the weather. DHL suddenly realized, hey, we've got roving weather stations. And they have started selling their data to the weather channels of the world. This is a revenue stream they never even thought of, because they hadn't thought of the data that's in their business. Your knowledge of local conditions would be hugely interesting to insurance companies, to banks, to retailers of all sorts. What data do you have, and what are you doing with it? Secondly, what's your plan for emerging markets? The wonderful thing about emerging markets, Africa in particular, you're going to focus tomorrow on Africa, so let's just think about that for a minute. Africa, we often think of as a place that we have to take innovation to. But the wonderful thing about this digital age is that you can leapfrog. Nigeria doesn't have landlines because they were too late putting them in, so they've gone straight to the digital, even 4G in some parts of Nigeria, immediately. Kenya did the same, going straight to fiber optics. And then out of these countries are coming remarkable innovations. One of the biggest innovations in banking, M-Pesa, mobile payments that require no banking at all. Nearly 70% of Kenyan adults now use phone-to-phone money transfers, and the government is using it to pay their weekly wages. The most innovative bank in the world, according to the BAI Finacle Global Banking Innovations Awards, is a South African bank, First National Bank, coming up with huge amounts of innovation. This is not just about what you take to Africa, it's what you get from Africa. What's your plan for emerging markets? And the digital world, how does that impact that plan? What's your driverless car? And my fourth question is, do you have the right people in your business to answer some of the questions I've been asking? In my experience, most IT departments in companies like yours are not the right people. They are risk and compliance officers, possibly worse than that, policemen. They are the no people. You ask them if you can do something, their answer is no. You ask them why, they say security and leave the room, as if the conversation is now over. When did IT stop being a service to the business? When did IT stop being the future department of the business? IT needs to recover that. And just so that I can recover my IT audience, I was in IT for 10 years in the 1990s. I know it's not your fault. You don't have enough resources. They keep changing the specification. And, well, the role of IT is to have a competition. There's a competition between the IT department, whose job it is to make more idiot-proof programs, and the universe, whose job it is to make better idiots. And the universe seems to be winning. But even IT, if it's not your fault, you've still got to do something about it. Do you have the right people in your business to help you? And that leads me to the second thing. I said there were two things. The first one's taken up a lot of time. But the second one is very simple. If our ability to gather data, process it in real time, and use that data instantly to valuable effect is going to change everything, the second thing that will change everything is the fact that there is a generation of young people who are growing up in the world, and they are growing up digital. Everything I've said so far is completely normal to them. Nothing I've said so far would have surprised them. In fact, my scariest audience ever is high school students and university students, because this is what I do for a living, trying to impress people with visions of how the world is changing. And 20 minutes into it, these young people look at you and go, "But we know all of this. What are you saying to us? This is normal. This is the world. What are you talking about?" They have grown up with cell phones, mobile phones. They've grown up with the internet. The internet was developed in 1991 by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN. And at about that time, that was when mobile phones were coming in. At least you didn't have to carry the suitcase and the brick next to your ear after 1991. And young people born in 1991 or later, well, if they went to university, then they started working for you last year. And these, let's call them the digital natives, are coming soon to an office near you. And they're pretty scary. This is my favorite photograph in this presentation, actually, because these 4 young people are actually sending text messages to each other. This is how they choose to communicate. Not because they are stupid, not because they are lazy, not because they have no social skills. In fact, they have highly developed digital social skills. This is their preference. They speak digital as their first language. Now, some of you are very good with your phones. You've got computers open, you've got iPads, and you've got smartphones. But let's be honest, you're digital immigrants. Okay? You speak digital as a third or a fourth, and I know some of you even a 9th language. I know for some of you it's even worse than that. You're digital dinosaurs, but maybe that's another presentation on another day. These digital natives, if you really still don't know what I'm talking about, well, have a look at this. This is my favorite bit. She has to check whether her finger is still working. That's not my daughter. You can find that clip on YouTube. But what a statement, hey? An iPad, or a magazine is an iPad that does not work. Do you think she'll ever get a subscription to a print magazine? Do you think she'll ever read a print newspaper? How happy do you think she would be working for you? Now, don't think you've got 18 years until she arrives. Her older brothers and sisters and cousins have been coming into your workplace for the last year or so. They're the students that have been sitting in this conference. They are also your future. To be successful in this industry, in any industry, You have to attract these young people who want all of their data always available all of the time on any device, not the device you want them to use, the device they prefer using. If they want to use an Apple product and you've got PCs, tough, they want to use an Apple product. They want it now, they want it instant, and they want it free. Does that sound like your office? Because if it doesn't, how are you going to get them? Where are they going to come from? Your IT policies are the single biggest problem your HR department has. And you need to sort this out. Otherwise, there is no future for you. Sure, there's technology that's happening on the science bit of your business, and that's clever stuff and great stuff. But it's actually out on the consumer-facing side, on the B2B-facing side, on the recruitment side, on the HR side that my focus is for you this evening. As a leader in your business, it is imperative that you take these issues seriously. You see, over the last 20 years, but in the last 5 or 6 years in particular, the world has changed. And for the next 10 to 20 years, it will continue to change in unbelievable ways. It's not just a speeding up of change, it is transformation change that's taking place. The rules for success and failure are being rewritten. And different times require a different script. What is your different script? What are you deliberately, consciously doing different because we live in different times? What will you do differently in the next few years? Not just a little step up, not just a few tweaks and changes. We live in different times, and you need a different script. Now is the time for bold steps. We need mindset shifts, not just strategy tweaks. Now, I know I've spent a lot of time talking about technology, and I know that we live in this digital age, but I don't want you to think it's only about technology. In a high-tech world, there's still a high-touch component. So just for a few of you who are freaking out just a little bit as I close, what you don't want is to go this route with technology.
Hi, I just want to make a deposit.
You have your account number?
Right here.
Lean forward, please.
What is this?
It's our new customer tracking system. It has your account number and barcode. It speeds you right through the line.
Now what?
That line over there.
Feel like banks are getting a bit impersonal?
What's a holdup?
I hate it when these things don't scan.
We live in a world of remarkable change. How will you respond? Technology is a key driver of change to transform the world as we know it. As a leader in the agribusiness industry, you need to really understand how transforming technology will be. All the other things we've discussed today and will continue to discuss tomorrow all just add to the momentum of historical change. The world will not look the same as it does today by 2020. And you and your business need to respond with bold new initiatives. You as a leader need to respond with bold leadership. And probably most importantly, you have to make sure you've got the right people with you. Because it is the people in your business that will ensure your future success. And especially those digital natives who will ensure that you can sustain that success well into the century. That is how agribusiness will rise to the challenge that the world has placed before it. A challenge of a changing world that you are desperately needed for and in desperate need of responding. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. For more information, follow the Twitter feed or contact me in any of these ways. If you are one of the digital dinosaurs and you would prefer my postal address, I'll be around at the social function and you can come and get it from me later. But thank you very much for your time. Anil, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.